Okay, good afternoon. My name is Ani Pagosian. I'm with the City of Glendale's Economic Development Division. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. Thank you for joining us for our second virtual Glendale Tech on Tap event on 3 lessons learned from my startup failure by Adriana Torresan. Have you ever had an idea for a startup and you never knew where to begin? Starting a startup takes courage, time, resilience, nerves. Our speaker, Adriana Torresan, is a seasoned product expert and serial founder with a deep passion for the transformations that occur at the intersections of business, people, and technology. She has helped create and build products for a variety of platform technologies and industries, including Disney Imagineering, BMW, Capital Group, and Age of Learning. Today, she helps startups achieve product market fit and accelerate their growth by implementing the fearless product strategy, a framework guided by authentic data, no misleading interpretations, and audacious experiments. Because now more than ever, we need vision, candor, and courage to reach optimal exits. Adriana, take it away with your presentation.
All right. Let me share. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope everyone can hear me fine. Let me take you to March 26, 2018. It was the first time I was going to Kansas City, Missouri. It was a very cold early morning, mainly for a girl from Ipanema. Yes, I was born in Rio. I just thought it would be fun to share. I was on my high heels and pushing this very heavy suitcase. As I walked out of my hotel lobby, I looked across and I saw this huge plaza that I would need to be walking towards. As I started walking the plaza, I realized, I started wondering what I was doing there, why I was there. I started wondering if people would like what was about to present them. I started wondering if my husband would manage the kids for 3 days at home all by himself. I was feeling afraid, nervous, but I was also excited because I was about to give birth to my 3rd child. I was going to launch a product that I was working for the past year. I was going to join the Smart Cities Conference, a conference, one of the main conferences in this space, and was absolutely amazing, was pure joy. However, when I got home after the conference, I realized the baby was still in diapers. And today I will share with you what fills the diapers of a startup. But before I get started, I would love if you could start entering in the chat room where you're connecting from. And let me make sure I can see the chat. One second. Okay, perfect. And you guys are seeing that screen with my chat here on top, correct, Annie? Yeah, you guys are seeing that? All right, yeah. Okay. All right. So here I was at the Smart Cities Connect, pitching my product for the first time. I was part of the Showcase Innovation Challenge and was fantastic. Before I get started, let me talk about Glendale, Pasadena, Brazil, Los Angeles. Yeah, let me share a little bit about my startup. So I created a civic engagement platform. It was a SaaS product, was software as a service, and was also a B2B2C type of product where my primary customers were local governments, mid-sized cities, and my secondary customers were the city partners, nonprofits, mainly nonprofits. And my consumer, they were the residents of that city. The goal was to create a platform where we could aggregate all the free events, the programs, the services that all the departments across the cities are offering, and also their partners, right? The nonprofits, the local nonprofits. So aggregate everything to keep people local and join their local community, shopping local, and and really stay local and have fun. I also would like to invite you to go to the chat, and I'm curious who we have in the audience today. If you have an idea and you are at an idea stage in a startup, please write idea on the chat. In case you are currently working on your MVP and you're currently developing that first iteration of MVP, write MVP. If you have launched an MVP and you are in the product market fit stage, please write product market fit. And the fourth group that I would like to invite is if you are an investor, an advisor, you service provider, please write support. This way we start having a sense of who we have in the audience. Great, we have idea support, MVP, product market fit, fantastic, thank you guys. Okay, and so here was my first mistake. I had an imaginary product market fit. And the reason why I believe I had an imaginary product market fit was because when I first acquired the first city to run the pilot, what I did is I built a prototype as a good UX designer that I am. I've been doing UX design, UI design since the late 90s. So I built a prototype and I went to share the prototype and do tests with the consumers, the residents. I got feedback and then I went straight into development to develop the first MVP. So the step that I should have not overlooked was to test the idea with the other cities, right? It's like, how come I did that? And I did that for a very simple reason. I was super excited. I had this wonderful client waiting for the product I was building. So I thought I had sort of a product market fit, and was my first startup, so you guys understand. So the first lesson learned is make sure you validate your hypothesis. Hypotheses are educated guesses, I'm sorry. It's your current understanding and your assumptions of your current customers, your possible customer business market. And the way you can write hypotheses is like this. Because we believe in X, if we do Y, we expect Z to happen. So the way I could have defined the hypothesis in my startup would be like this: because we believe cities want to increase civic engagement. If we build a mobile app aggregating local events and services, cities will pay for it. A year and a half after I launched my startup, I had the opportunity to be a co-founder and a chief product officer in another startup. They were at the idea stage. During that time, I had a chance to really think about this hypothesis validation, and I came up with a document similar to this, where we list the hypothesis, we list the format of that experiment, and I will talk about the different types of formats soon. You can list the time frame that the hypothesis will take, a week, a day, right, a month, the cost. When you are listing the cost, remember to list your own time, and the desired result. If you're doing a Facebook ad, maybe you want to, there is the click-through rate numbers or anything else. And then at the end, you reach the conclusion if that hypothesis was true or false. I will be sharing this template at the end of the presentation. I have a quick survey to get you guys feedback on the presentation. So if you would like to get this template, I will be happy to share. There are different ways to test your hypothesis, and customer development or customer discovery, it's one of them. And the most popular one, and I think the most important one. And one way or the other, every startup is doing customer development, right? So customer development, it's just an interview You should be interviewing your potential customers. And actually, before you get started in the interview phase, what we all should actually be doing is define that target audience, right? The demographics, the psychographics, whom you believe your potential customers are. So interview them. It's not about asking their thoughts about prototypes. So you should be taking no prompts at all, no prototypes. This is not a usability test. And the guideline is if you have a B2B, you should be interviewing about 50 people. If you have a B2C, it should be about 100. These numbers might be a little high, but the more you talk with people, the better it is. The interviews should also take between 15 to 30 minutes, and it can be informal as well. But those numbers are suggested by Steve Blank, considered the father of customer discovery. He wrote this book, The Startup Owner's Manual, which is great. And this sentence here is one of his most popular sentences, I believe, phrases. He says, there is no facts inside your building, get outside. However, I believe that the get outside part of it needs further exploration. As I was saying, when I joined my second startup, I had the opportunity to really go back into this hypothesis validation, right? And I came across this book called the Mom Test Book. The reason why it has this name is because he says, if you ask your mom about your business idea, if she likes or not, of course she will lie to you and she will say she loves it. The same is true for everyone else, right? People don't want to be rude with you when you're asking their thoughts about your ideas. So the way you ask that question is extremely important. And this is how he suggests you should start. What are your big goals and focus right now? If you're building a workout type of app, you can start by asking, what are your biggest challenges when you are looking for a workout, right? Timing and solutions. And then as you are in the conversation during the interview, we can narrow it down and ask, how do you solve the problem today? How much time do you spend, throughout that solution? How much money do you spend? You will learn not only if your idea is a valid idea or not, but you also learn about the competitors in the market. Competitive analysis, it's not a direct way of doing hypothesis validation, but it's a way to do hypothesis validation in the market, I believe, right? And it's an essential part of this idea research phase that every startup should be going through. Competitive analysis is a look at your competitors in the market. You should be looking at direct and indirect competitors. For example, Airbnb and VRBO are direct competitors. Airbnb, when first it started, it seems like Craigslist was their direct competitor. So it was not direct, right? It was the indirect competitor. So that's the difference. You want to make sure you're doing competitive analysis, because if you end up finding that the market is oversaturated with solutions similar to yours, you might want to think again. Or you may find that there is no competitors in the market, and then you would start asking why there's no competitors. Is it a timing problem? Is it a technology? Maybe the market's not ready for it. Or you might be creating a completely new category, which is completely fine. But it's important to know where you're getting to. Ideally, you want to identify everyone, but really dig deep into the top five players, and it's an ongoing type of exercise. Every 3 months, 6 months, you want to look at it again and see if there is new competitors, new products, new features, and what has changed. So unfortunately, it's kind of time consuming, but it is what it is. And just some brief guidelines of how to do competitive analysis. I personally like to start with the business, right? How old is the company, number of employees, funding rounds, annual recurring revenue, which the ARR is a little bit tricky to find, but if you look at interviews with executives, you might get a sense. You want to look at the product, how many products they have, the key features, what is the user flow, pricing, what's the business model, and reviews. Looking at customers' reviews. If it's an app, you go to App Store. It's wonderful to learn about how good and the quality of the product and how satisfied the users are. And then I like reaching some conclusions and defining what are the strengths, the weaknesses, and what are the opportunities that this competitor is leaving open that maybe I can come in and differentiate myself. So besides customer development and the competitive analysis, there are many different ways to validate a hypothesis. Search engine marketing is one of them. If it's a B2B, you can do some pre-sale speech and get some letter of intents. Pre-order page, you can, if it's a B2C, you can do a pre-launch waiting list and be creative. There are many different other ways of validating your hypothesis. I'd like to ask you this question. What are your hypotheses? Or what type of hypothesis validations have you done with your own products? And mainly, if you have done something that I haven't listed here, that would be wonderful to learn more about it. Let me drink something. Yes, I can make the document available for download. It's Jamie who asked that question. Make sure to enter your email address and mention that you would like the document, please. And thank you for the book suggestion. I will definitely take a look. All right. So the second mistake I made was the fact that I built an MVP. I know that sounds strange because every single startup out there is building an MVP. So I know you know that an MVP stands for minimal viable product. It was a term created by Eric Ries on his book, The Lamy Startup. The problem with my MVP was the fact that I launched it too soon and was too basic. So my mobile app was a list of events with a filter, very simple filter. But when I launched the mobile app, we didn't have any images. So can you imagine going through a boring long list of events? It was dynamic and I thought it would be enough to keep people engaged. Turned out it wasn't. So no images. I didn't have any search. And again, which it's again another important feature when you have a long list of content. And I didn't have personalization, which was part of my core promising, right? The aggregation and curation of content. Before I talk about the lessons learned on the MVP part, I want to talk about the Lamy Startup. It's a wonderful book. If you have read in the past and you're considering going back to the startup journey, make sure to read it again. If you have never read, make sure to pick it up and read. It's a wonderful reading and it will help you a lot with your own startup. The challenges of MVP, in my opinion, it's choosing which features to include and which features not to include on that first iteration, right? He talks about the build, measure, learn feedback loop and the fact that it's an experimentation. And I think that a lot of the times when we get in this startup journey, there's so much going on in our minds that we have a tendency, some of us might forget that this loop, it's an experimentation loop. We should go through them a lot of times. It's just not building and hoping that will be wonderful when we launch. So I was taking a close look on the book as I was putting together this presentation. And I thought this, MVP is not necessarily the smallest product imaginable. It's simply the fastest way to get through the build, measure, learn feedback loop. The goal of the MVP is to begin the process of learning, not to end. From my perspective, I don't believe startups should rush to get into the build, measure, and learn feedback loop. There is the right time to enter, because what I have seen happening a lot of the times is when startups get into this feedback loop, they end up there for years. I have seen startups spending 2-3 years building the first iteration of MVP. Mainly if you don't have experience with development, it's a very tricky environment and mindset to be. The other thing is the MVP, it's not the beginning of the learning. In my opinion, the hypothesis validation is the beginning of the learning. I repeat this because I find it extremely important. The MVP is not the beginning. The hypothesis validation is the beginning of the learning. So the lesson learned is don't build an MVP, build a MDP. MDP stands for minimum delightful product, right? Let's make sure people fall in love when they get their product in their hands. I did not create this term. This term was created by Andy Berry on a blog post he wrote in 2007, so it's quite old. He argues that build a viable product and figure out what is viable for people, it's tricky. And he believes that in order to build a minimal delightful product, you need to have two main qualities or follow two main frameworks, per se, design and quality. MDP should have an excellent user experience design and quality. And when he talks about quality, he talks about making sure the product is bugs-free, right? It's when it reaches people's hands, people will actually, in fact, be able to use instead of fighting with bugs all the time. The problem is that I am a UX designer, UI designer, so I had a box checked from the beginning, right? It was fine, my UX was fine. And in terms of quality, I had always hated seeing bugs in products. So before I launched, I hired a QA company offshore. They did a bunch of tests. After I launched and we did some improvements, I had a part-time QA tester in my team. So I had that checked. So what I believe could further define what an MVP is collaboration. I believe it's extremely important to bring everyone when you're defining your features and prioritizing the features on your throughout the loops, right? Throughout the product lifecycle. You want to discuss the feature prioritization not only with your team, but you want to discuss with maybe the family and friends who had helped you with the first round, your advisors, your mentors, your investors, and of course the customers, right? Bring everyone in the loop to help you prioritize those features. The other important thing to build an MDP is the feedback loop planning. You need to make sure you're thinking long-term, right? That when you enter this feedback loop, you'll go through those loops a few times. And a good way to plan this is through release planning. For the developers in the room, you know, the release planning is software development life. It's part of the software development life cycle, and has a few phases, the alpha, beta, and the final release. In the alpha phase, you want to launch the product and give to your team to test, right? They will use the product for a few days, then you get feedback, you interview them, send them surveys, and then you will improve So the next phase, the next round, you can now do a beta test with family and friends, for example. And next, you can do a beta test with a closed beta test with 100 potential users. And maybe you invite the users you had interviewed during the customer development phase. If you go through the loop a few times before you do the actual launch, I guarantee you, you have a much stronger product in your hands. So I highly recommend paying attention on this, on the number of feedback loops you want to go through. Hacking Growth, it's a very interesting book. He talks a lot about, he has a framework of how to help you to prioritize the features. And he also talks about the importance of keeping and not only keeping, but understanding what are your metrics, your key KPIs early on, because when you start thinking about investors, that's what investors will want to see. They want to understand your attractions, your active users, your number of registrations, and etc. So it's extremely important to get the KPIs going early on. Okay. The way to make sure, one second, guys. Yeah, I skipped one. I know I had skipped one slide, okay. So here was my third mistake. I believe that if I build, they would come. More or less, that was what was in my heart. On the B2B portion, I did go to 3 conferences in the space, in the smart cities space. I spent a lot of money on it because I purchased the booths and I was kind of a sponsor. And on the B2C side, I was believing that the organic growth, the organic social media would be able to help. And I was also believing, hoping that the customer would be able to help. It turned out that marketing and sales, it's much harder than I had imagined. So the lesson learned is have a strong marketing and sales plan. I believe startups have a tendency to focus too much in the technology. When people have an idea, they want, and if they're not a developer, they immediately start thinking, who's the developer? Who will be the CTO and the CTO in development and the tech stack? Don't forget that people need to buy your product at the end of the day. That's the most important thing, actually. So allocate budget for marketing and sales, unless you are like a rock star in the social media, which there are exceptions. But chances are when you launch your first MVP, it will not go viral as Facebook did, right? So have a budget for marketing and sales. Know your weaknesses and get help. For example, sorry guys. If you are building a product for the health industry, and you don't have any experience in that industry, make sure to get someone that had either created a product for that industry or has some sort of experience, right? Consider partnerships is a great way to really increase your outreach and marketing and sales. My 4th mistake was the fact that I was a solopreneur. I wasn't a solopreneur by choice. I just didn't find the right person. In fact, my CTO was also my co-founder. Wonderful CTO, wonderful developer. I'm extremely thankful for having him on my side throughout this journey, but he didn't have the luxury at the time to wear the multiple hats that I needed to wear. I also found two other co-founders along the way, but the timing wasn't right for us. So the fourth lesson learned is find a co-founder now. It's extremely important. It will be a little time consuming, but it will help you immensely along the way. A few ideas how you can do this: angel list, tap into your own network, your previous co-workers, people you had studied in college with. Allocate 3 months for a trial, set milestones for that person, see if you guys can work well together. Consider like a dating kind of phase, right? But the important thing is find someone that can wear the multiple hats with you. As the founder and CEO of a startup, I was doing everything I had never imagined I would be doing, besides accounting, legal, right, agreements, hiring people, doing all the marketing and sales, design. The only thing I wasn't doing is the development part. But so make sure to find someone. If you are looking for a marketing person, make sure she may be able to help you with accounting or something else. The more you can share, the bigger the chances for you to succeed. So before I talk about my last lesson learned, I want to make sure you guys have my contact information. Feel free to reach out, adrianatt.com. And here was the most important lesson I had learned throughout this journey, was the fact that I did it. And I did it all, everyone. I hired, I fired, I managed, I sold, I cried here and there, but I launched a product in a city with over 200,000 people. And if you ask me, closing this startup was the hardest thing I did in life? Absolutely not. I had 2 natural deliveries. I am an immigrant, and I have these thick accents that I'm sure you had a hard time understanding here and there. So closing this startup was not the hardest thing I did in life. In fact, after having kids was the most exciting thing I did. So don't be afraid to fail. Get started, keep going. After all, that's the best way to learn. Now, let me bring you back to where we are right now, connecting from home rather than being together in a physical space. What do you think will be the post-COVID-19 world look like, right? It's what is in our minds nowadays. The reality is that no one knows. No one in this room can tell you what to do now and tomorrow in order to really succeed. But the important thing is that whatever happens, I hope you now have a solid foundation on how to build your startup. Everything that I had shared with you here today, I learned by myself. No one told me. The only part that I was doing before was the competitive analysis, because it's part of UX and marketing in general. But if I would have known, maybe my story would have been different. So don't forget, validate your hypothesis. Build an MVP, not just an MVP. Have a strong marketing and sales plan. Startups is not only about technology. Find a co-founder. Where is my find a co-founder? And whatever happens and whatever the world looks like, you'll be ready. Just do it. And that's pretty much it. So as I had mentioned before, I would love if you could pick up your phone, scan this QR code, and answer 3 questions on a survey about this presentation. And then you have an opportunity to enter your email so I can send you that hypothesis validation template. And I want to say thank you to Annie Pogosian and to Jennifer Hiramoto for opening this space here for me today. I deeply appreciate your guys' support and allowing me to share all of this with you all. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you, Adriana. That was great. Do you want We'll take any questions now in the chat box, and Adriana is here to answer it. In the meantime, please save the date for our third virtual Glendale Tech on Tap Pitch Fest, which is scheduled for June 24th at 1 p.m. The deadline to apply to pitch your company is on Sunday, May 31st. You can visit our meetup page or Eventbrite for more information, or feel free to contact me. Most of you should have my email address. If not, send me a different, I'll go ahead and put it in the chat actually, so you can connect with me that way. And also don't forget to stay connected by following our social media outlets at Choose Glendale and Glendale_Tech. Thank you. And that was a wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed. And thank you everyone for all your comments. So let me scroll down. So it seems like we don't have any questions at the moment. Should we? Okay. What made me shut down my startup? I was a solo founder, remember? At the end of the day, it gets really tiring. So that was one reason. The second reason is I ran out of cash. I ended up putting a lot of money, much more than I had ever imagined in this startup. The one thing I would like to suggest and is be as cheap as possible when you start. Hire offshore. I know we are trying to build our local economy, but at the beginning of the really first weeks building the MVP gets really hard to hire developers and if you like development, get started yourself as well. As for hiring, the other thing that I would say is there are a lot of ways you can develop your first MVP with interns. I think General Assembly has a program, actually. A friend of mine who has a startup, he used some of their services to build his MVP. I was really impressed with the quality. So there are local resources you can use as well, besides going offshore. Yes, I had a couple of mentors, but it took me time to understand that I would need mentors with government experience. I was reaching out to a lot of people and I joined some groups early on. But again, I think when you are a first-time founder, there is so much you need to learn that you end up getting lost. So personally, the accounting and legal aspect, I was getting really like, oh my God, and the agreements, right, to put together. And then when you start thinking about fundraising, there is all the fundraising stuff in your pitch deck. So yeah, mentors are incredible, but you need to make sure you're getting mentors that had gone through the experience you're about to go through, or it's a mentor or an advisor that has experience in the industry you want to start focusing on in case you don't have experience in that industry. Yes, I was a solopreneur the entire time. As I had mentioned before, I did have a CTO who was my co-founder, but he's a single dad and has a full-time job and has everything else going on in his life. So I was a solopreneur the whole time. I think, so I'm reading here, I'm sorry guys, I probably should be reading the questions. Any advice to ensuring to find the right co-founder, any red flags to look out for? Yes, I see the co-founder, they're looking for the co-founder as you are, actually that's what everyone says, right? You're looking for a partner. It's basically like marriage. You will be talking with that person every single day. When you're happy, when you're sad, when you're angry, you need to find someone that has a similar kind of mindset as you, has maybe the same, I don't know if it's the same principles, but has similar values and principles as well, I believe. And the important thing is really is to allocate that 3 months to explore each other's how each other's style, and talk and meet and set milestones and deadlines. Don't let it shoe loose, or let's see what happens. Let's see, how big of a team do you need before you ask for funding? What are investors expecting? I don't believe you need the size of the team. It's not that important. What is important is the team itself, who they are, how long have you worked with them, what is your experience, how long have you guys been together, what have you been building together. Maybe you had worked with some of them, they were your colleagues at work, but you have never built anything together. So it's a different story, different dynamic. But as far as I know, investors, they like to see a team of maybe at least 3, 4, and they like to see that you have advisors, and good advisors with the experience I had mentioned before. I was getting ready to, so did you pitch to an investor? I did a family and friends round. Then I was starting to get ready to do my pre-seed round. I spent a year working on my pitch deck, but then unfortunately I stopped there. I was building the list of investors to reach, but I was very burned out with the sales portion of my startup, right? It's the selling to the government. It's not the easiest type of sale, but nothing is easy, right? So yeah, I end up not pitching to any investors. So there is a question from Peter Han. Okay, look up, Valerie, Peter Han, let me look for it, okay. Do you think being female immigrant impacted your launch experience? Female immigrant, I believe so. Again, I've been in this country since 2001. And I still have this accent, guys. It's painful, I know. I should take it seriously. Maybe it's the time. But yes, I think it has an impact. Absolutely. I don't know how different to answer that question, but it definitely has an impact. Mainly when I was trying to do phone calls, right? Because when you are in person and they are seeing your mouth move and the gestures, it's a little bit easier. But on a phone, it was the hardest thing ever. Thank you, Annie. Thank you so much. Guest 1, you didn't enter your name there. Thank you. Okay, I think, did I answer all the questions? I think I did, correct? All right, one more. Yes, of course. Putting my email back up on the screen. Here it is. Thank you, everyone. I deeply appreciate the support. I need to confess that it's a little bit strange be here behind the screen by myself, like I'm by myself in this room, and I am not seeing your guys' face. I really hope to meet everyone in person and do this again when we can all interact and see and look at each other's eyes and shake hands. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. I believe there are a few announcements that some people would like to make. George, did you want to participate?
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks, Adriana. Adriana and I talked on Monday, and sorry that I got stuck on another meeting. I couldn't hear your entire presentation. I'm sure you did a great job. I guess if we're doing announcements, my announcement is myself and a number of people had put in a proposal for the Glendale Accelerator. We weren't chosen, but we've now pivoted off that, and I just wanted to share what we're up to. It may be of interest for some people. So we're on a mission to democratize entrepreneurship, and we're creating a new program which is looking for entrepreneurs and residents, EIRs, to join a 100-day kind of pre-seed accelerator program. We're going to take 40 of the best people we can find, put them into 10 teams of 4, kind of give them an idea, and then run them through kind of a virtual accelerator process to help validate the idea with the outcome of worst case, kind of gaining some great experience, middle case, you know, being an awesome opportunity to continue working on the project, and best case, finding a winner and kind of joining as a co-founder on that. So it's a unique new concept. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'll put my contact info in the box. If that sounds interesting, either to do as like a side thing to whatever you're working on or whatever. Initially, we thought we would target kind of like the 35 million that are unemployed and the graduating college, the grads that are having difficulty finding jobs. But soon that's kind of quickly gone to more and more experienced, and you know, we're looking for second-time founders, people that have had a startup and it failed or they're pivoting, certainly founders with an exit, as well as just people that are working that corporate job and want to do something better. They know they could be a founder, they could be an entrepreneur, and they don't really have an idea, but they want to get in the game somehow. People that can't take the risk of kind of going through what Adriana has just shared. So there's different profiles that seem to be really taking interest in this concept, and we're pretty excited about this experiment. So if it sounds interesting, and I'm already seeing some comments, I'll put my contact info. Please email me. We just drafting up kind of all the documents around this, and we're looking to launch this in the next 30 days. So thank you, and I'll pass it on to whoever else has some announcements. Thanks, Ani, for giving me a couple minutes there.
Sure. On that note, I did want to mention that our Glendale City Council did approve 2 accelerators yesterday afternoon. So we will be getting a Children's Hospital Los Angeles will be opening up their first pediatric accelerator in the country in the city of Glendale. So we're very excited about that. The launch date should be by the end of this year. The second accelerator is Hero House. They are a Armenian-based accelerator program, and SmartGate VC, which is their funding portion of it. So we're very excited. More information can be found online, and we will be releasing a press release soon. So instead of getting 1 accelerator for $1 million, thanks to Senator Anthony Portantino, we were able to secure 2 accelerators with those funds. Any other comments, questions, announcements? No? Okay, well, we look forward to having you at our Tech on Tap next month. If you have any questions or need anything in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll go ahead and put my email address in the chat box again. Stay safe, be healthy, and we'll see you all next month. Bye.
Bye, everyone.